Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the K-Space. Tonight we'll be discussing Civil War, the latest film by Alex Garland. This film received an 81% critic score on the Tomato Meter and a 71% audience score. The plot synopsis reads as follows. From filmmaker Alex Garland comes a journey across a dystopian future America following a team of military-embedded journalists as they race against time to reach DC before rebel factions descend upon the White House. And as mentioned, this is directed by Alex Garland, who you may know from Ex Machina, Annihilation, and his latest film, Men, before Civil War. He also did a show called Devs. Now, I've seen Annihilation, Civil War, and Men, and I didn't really care for Men. But Ex Machina, I feel, was his best film. Annihilation was pretty strong as well. We have Kirsten Dunst as the lead, Wagner Moura, Kaylee Spaney, who you may recognize from the Priscilla film of last year, and Stephen Henderson. And the critic consensus here, tough and unsettling by design, Civil War is a gripping close-up look at the violent uncertainty of life in a nation in crisis. The audience consensus, Civil War does a good job of putting the viewer on the ground, although it'll be frustrating for anyone hoping to get any clues as to what caused the conflict in the first place. And I am inclined to agree with the audience on this. Before I get into my negatives, I will give a little bit of a background here. I think the plot synopsis given on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb is rather thin. The embedded journalists in this film, as they were, are set to have a legendary interview with the sitting president, who's currently in his third term, in somewhat of a totalitarian, tyrannist fashion. And interestingly enough, the studio released a map of the United States prior to the release of this film, showing all of the territories currently in the United States depicted in this film. It's explained that Texas and California have formed an alliance, and there are maybe one or two other factions operating across the Midwest and the South. All the other states are still with the Union and have not succeeded. And if you go into this hoping for answers or hoping for explanations, then you will be sorely disappointed. What this movie really is a road trip movie. It's been said before by other critics on YouTube. This is sort of a road trip movie where we get vignettes of each stop and sort of the climate in that area, sort of the mindset of some of these people who are engaged in the conflict. And it does have sort of a Full Metal Jacket feel where you are dropped in with journalists and you're seeing it through their lens, through their eyes, which I did like. I do think that that was an interesting way to format the film, but it does not offer the scope of a movie, of a script that we have here. I mean, for a Civil War movie in America to be released and not touch on certain things that this movie strayed from, I think is sort of, it didn't work. It really didn't work. I think people are going to walk away from this wanting more answers. Before I get into that, I'll go into my positives. I do think the movie is incredibly well shot. I think the sound design is going to certainly be nominated for an Oscar at the very least. Sound design was very strong. And Garland has a real good eye for shots. He's a good cameraman. This is no different from Ex Machina and Annihilation in that sense. He sort of reminds me of Denis Villeneuve in his minimalist approach. There's no frills, but any use of CGI or any use of any use of CGI is just well handled and it looks very realistic. Now, the acting was strong here. I think the writing could have been better. But all in all, I would say there are some things that make this entertaining and well worth your watch. As I said, it's sort of you're watching vignettes. They don't really thread with one another quite well, but each place they stop at, you are constantly on the edge of your seat and you're wondering what are they going to encounter next. Going into some of my negatives here, as mentioned, I do think that they dropped the ball here monumentously when it comes to giving a backstory to how this conflict began. You know, this is a movie called Civil War about America, and you're releasing it in the year 2024, an election year, mind you, when social and political tensions have never been higher and the country has never been more divided. And I just think that, you know, maybe maybe that was intentional. I don't know. I understand the want and desire to be apolitical as to not create a Twitter, a war on film Twitter or something like that. But at the end of the day, art is not safe, and movies, I don't think should always play it safe. I think movies aren't always designed to make a statement. I think they are mainly designed to entertain. But I think if you can get something in there that people can take home with them and unpack and discuss it, then you're better off. And I just think this movie left way too much ambiguity and way too much um, for the viewer to take home and to draw their own conclusions from. I just think that with a movie of this scope and what they were hoping for, this really fell flat for me. This one really did not work. I think they would have been way better off by giving some explanation here, some kind of context for us to analyze. So with that being said, I do think the movie's worth your time. I mean, especially if you have AMC stubs, go watch it. It is entertaining. Some of the action scenes are very highbrow and very intense. But overall, I think this one fell short of the goal. So overall, I think I'm going to give this movie Civil War a 6.5 out of 10. That score is subject to change, but for now, that's how I felt walking away from it. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have seen this, please, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Tell me what you thought, and I'll see you next time. Have a good night.